ever tried Jingalov Hats was in Stepanakert, the central bazaar there. There's women who make it all day long and they're real pros. It's a delicious flatbread filled with greens, and I knew I had to figure out a way to make it back in California using the greens I could find here. But the tricky part is, in Stepanakert, the women will use up to 20 plus greens, and a lot of them are only grown locally and they forage for them in the spring. So to figure out how I could make them here, I went foraging this morning, at the San Francisco Ferry Plaza Farmers Market. So let me show you what I got. Here's what to look for when you're buying greens, whether it's the grocery store, you're growing them in the backyard, you're foraging. You want to have a mix of about half of the greens should be sort of neutral, like I'm talking the spinach and this chard right here. And then a quarter of the greens should be something that's more herbal. So today I'm going to have my dill, my cilantro, my parsley, and then the other quarter should be greens that are a little bit bitter. So for that I'm using sorrel, and I'm also using, today I'm using arugula. And I do happen to have some turnip tops that I'd sliced off, some baby turnips. So that's something that you can use too. If you're looking for neutral greens and you want to use up what's already in your fridge, if you happen to have beets, beet greens are great as well. So is kale. Just with these thick stems, you might want to slice them really thin or leave them out and save them for another preparation. The next thing to do is really give your greens a nice wash. What I like to do is do this kind of a few hours before I decide to make the Jingalov Hats, so then the greens have a chance to just dry out on a towel. And then by then, the herbs and greens are nice and dry, so they're easier to chop. So while all the greens are sort of just drying on towels, I am going to make the dough. And the great thing about making Jingalov Hats dough is that it doesn't take very long at all. All I need is flour, some salt, and some water, and we're ready to rock and roll. I have a mix of whole wheat and all-purpose flour. It's about 1 2/3 cup, about 210 grams or so. 1 teaspoon of salt's going to go in there. Just going to mix that with my hands. Then I've got about 2/3 cup of water. You can do this with your hands. I'm just using this little trusty plastic sort of bench scraper that I use a lot, especially when I'm making sticky dough types of things. I'm just going to knead it in the bowl, just kind of press everything together and get in there with my hands, make it easier. And what's great is that within a half an hour you could have dough that's ready to go, because this is a griddled bread. It doesn't have any yeast in it, it doesn't need to rise, it doesn't need to proof overnight or any kind of complicated bread type of thing. It's really just something to hold all those greens together. Okay, so it's a little sticky, but that's okay. It will get less sticky the longer it rests. Right now, with my sticky fingers. Bloop. Okay, just gonna dust the counter. Woo! And then just with kind of the palm of my hand, I'm just gonna press the dough into the counter. It's not kneaded quite yet, so it's a little bit sticky. It's not gonna kind of look perfect. It's gonna look a little shaggy, and that's perfectly fine. You'll be amazed that within 20 minutes or even up to an hour, if you wanted to get to doing something else, the dough will just smooth out quite nicely and be quite easy to work with. Some flours absorb a little bit more water than others, so sometimes you'll find you just need to add more flour so it's not as sticky. But even if it is sticky, it will continue to absorb water as it rests, so you don't have to worry too much about that. And if you're really needing to get out some stress, you can always do that too. Just pick it up, throw it down. It's kind of fun. It might make your neighbors a little upset if it's loud. All right, it's getting a little bit smoother. At this point, it's ready to just chill out, relax, and I'll come back to it in 20 minutes at least, or up to an hour. So our dough's been resting. Let's take a look. So all I'm going to do now is divide it into 4 basically even pieces like that. I'm going to take the ball of my hands and then I'm just going to roll this to form just a circle. If you don't get it right the first time, you have 3 more chances. You use the friction from the counter to make it into a nice ball. I'm going to get fancy and I'm going to try to do it with both hands. Let's see if my left hand will cooperate. All right, now that that's in nice little even balls, the reason you do this is it makes it easier to roll it out in a circle later. I'm just gonna put it on this little tray and set these aside. And this will just hang out while I chop up the greens, and then we'll be able to shape the Jingalov Hats. Let's get chopping. I'm just gonna grab a handful of greens here. You don't have to chop greens one at a time. You can just kind of put them all in one big pile, make a mound like that, hold it, and then just slice through. One nice thing is that you can use the stems in everything. You don't have to get fussy. This makes the chopping go much faster. Stems and all go right into this big measuring cup. I'm basically looking to get 8 cups of finely chopped greens. Again, cut the bunch in the middle, go over to the side, and then just up into it. Okay, so this is 8 heaping cups, finely chopped greens, a mix of sour, herbal, and neutral greens to get that perfect sort of Jingalov Hats flavor. In they go to this nice big bowl. On top of that, just for, usually I use spring onions or scallions, but because there was such nice green garlic at the market today, mixing it up a little bit, I'm going to add some green garlic. And this is cheating a little bit. I didn't get this at the farmer's market this weekend, but I got it last weekend. So I'm putting in a little bit of this nice kind of large spring onion. Okay, nice big beautiful bowl. Now it's time to season up the greens. If you're doing a double batch, you saw how many greens I had earlier. I could certainly make twice as much Jingalov Hats as I have here. And if I were to do that, I would mix the greens in 2 batches, because as soon as I start mixing them, the greens will start to wilt, and you still want them to hold their shape before you put them into the Jingalov Hats filling. That is just a nice glug of olive oil, or you can use sunflower oil. This is a tablespoon of lemon juice, 2 teaspoons or so of paprika. I'm gonna put in a pretty generous pinch of chili flake, just because I like things a little bit spicier, and maybe like a teaspoon or so of salt. Like you're making some sort of very, very hearty salad. Okay, now it's time for the fun part. Let's roll out our dough and shape our Jingalov Hats. All right, flour the surface, nice little rolling pin. Don't have to use a rolling pin. If all you have is, say, a wine bottle, use that, whatever works. I'm just starting in the center of the dough and then flattening it out, keeping my counter nice and dusted. I'm looking to make a circle about 8 inches wide. The real pros at this make really big Jingalov Hats, but I find it this size right here is much easier to get used to handling, especially when you're just getting started. All right, so it's about as big as I need to make it. Next, I'm gonna take 2 cups of this filling. Heaping cups, don't be shy. You want more greens in here than you think will fit. So now that I have this nice pile, it's like a 2-inch pile of greens, I'm gonna pinch this, pretend I'm making like either a hand pie, a huge dumpling, whatever you think makes you, kind of helps you visualize what it takes to seal up something. Just do that. Okay, so I just made this. It's nice and fat right now, but what I'm gonna do, whoops, I got a couple holes. I'm gonna use the side of my hand to press down the seam to flatten it. At this point, some air might come out, and that's totally fine. If you do see a hole anywhere, you can patch it. All right, it's still a little puffy, so I'm gonna take my hand and just press it down. And then just patch any holes that I see. A couple are okay. They might mean that some of the juices run while you're griddling it, but it'll still taste good. So there's one. Let's do another one. Ooh, nice and hot. So to griddle the Jingalov Hats, I'm gonna use a wok, but I'm gonna turn it upside down and use it like a saj, which is traditional Middle Eastern griddle for flatbreads. If you don't have a wok and/or you don't have a gas stove, what you can use is a nice cast iron pan. Cast iron griddle that covers 2 burners is especially nice, or just use anything that you can get a really nice hot surface. Ooh, looking good. Oh, nice. Some bubbles, some blisters. Going in with the second one. Worst comes to worst and your stove is not very powerful, crank up your oven to the hottest temperature, put in the skillet that you're planning to use in the oven, and then add the Jingalov Hats to it and bake it. Let's take a look. Ooh, just what I like to see. A nice layer of greens, really thin dough. Let's see what it tastes like. Jingalov Hats, San Francisco style. So the great things to remember about this bread is you can make it where you live using the greens you find. Get creative, have a nice mix of greens, make this recipe when you're cleaning out your fridge, and when you make it, it's a tribute to the wonderful people of Artsakh who shared this recipe with us when we were working on our book. Thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for more videos.